Are you looking to take your personal finances to the next level? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, with your host, Joseph Sangle.
Well, welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. My name is Joe Sangle. I'm joined by my co-host, Megan Hibbard. Are you fired up today?
I am.
It's Monday.
It's Monday.
Yes, and we are on episode number
111.
111. That's hard to believe. 111.
It's a lot of
3
ones.
ones. The next time we can have repeated numbers, it's going to be 222. That'll be double this. And then 333. That'll be triple this. Oh, my goodness. We're headed for that. We want to be with you every week on Monday, helping you start your week off right, help you make good money decisions, helping you navigate trying times, great times, up times, down times, COVID times, whatever it might be. We never knew we'd be leading a podcast through a pandemic. And it's been very interesting and a wild ride. And so today we're going to talk about a unique topic.
Yep.
One that's going to be a sticky wicket. It's kind of challenging. And I'm just going to go ahead and warn our listeners, this might hit a nerve. In fact, when we were talking about it with our team a little while ago.
Yeah.
Ooh. In fact, we were doing a big Zoom meeting with different members of our team, and we saw lots of frown faces and angry faces. And then we had people smiling and then that weird smile that's uh-oh, I'm touching a nerve.
Yeah.
And then they shared why, and it's going to be awesome.
Yep.
And what is that topic?
Okay, so for this episode, we're talking about defining financial boundaries with children. So, yes, that wasn't intriguing enough. Here we go with the question. I know someone who is still financially supporting their adult children or child, maybe more than one, usually it's one, even though they should clearly be able to support themselves. They are nearly 40 years old. All of my kids are still in the house. What are some things I can do to help train my kids to be financially independent? And I'll add, and go.
Yeah, and go. Yeah, that's what you say in Proverbs 22:6, train a child in the way they should go. They need to leave. Unfortunately, that does not happen for every parent, that their kid does not go and they continue to want to be supported. And so we're going to talk about this topic. So I want you to just kind of think about this. If you have someone who is highly, is in your life, who who has adult children that are relying upon them for basic needs. We're not talking about helping them maybe going together on a business. We're talking about still helping them with rent payments and bailing them out of basic stuff, cell phone bills. And they're 35. Come on. And so we're talking about that. We're going to talk about both of those situations and how do we prevent that if we have young kiddos in the house.
Yes.
And let's before we dive in all that, we have a couple other segments we'd like to focus on. One of them is our featured resource. What is our featured resource this month?
Yes, this month our featured resource is the I Was Broke, Now I'm Not online study. So instantly access the 6 sessions, plus you can get a copy of I Was Broke, Now I'm Not for only $20 plus free shipping to the U.S. So this study is extremely practical, action-oriented, and biblically based, and you'll be inspired to take charge of your finances all from the comfort of your home. And you can do this as a virtual study or individually if you would like. And you can just visit iwasbrokenowimnot.com/online to learn more.
iwbnin.com/online. That'll be in the show notes as well. And now we're going to move to one of my favorite moments of the podcast. You know what time that is. Let's go.
Now it's time to get caught up with our current money events.
This portion of the podcast is sponsored by the I Was Broke, Now I'm Not banking section. Next steps page. So this is where you'll find all of our favorite banks who offer the best interest rates and 0 fees. Check it out today by visiting iwbnin.com. Click on Next Steps and select Banking.
Yeah, and we've been doing a lot of work on the website, making that stuff be improved. And we always recommend companies that we use, that we like their products. And one of the things that we know is we've checked each of these out. Most of them do not pay us any money to promote them. We put them on there because we like them and they've been beneficial to us. And we want to operate as a consumer advocate, helping point you to ways to maximize your money. And so for today's current money events section, I'm going to talk about some very important things. One of those things that we're going to talk about is the coronavirus challenges that we've been facing. And with the coronavirus, we're talking about what's happened with unemployment. We're talking about with things that have happened with individuals who have gotten sick. What are we talking about? And today I wanted to talk about something briefly. And that is, it has reminded us through this coronavirus that things are, that we are all mortal, and that it has affected people very differently. And by now, it has become so widespread that most of us know someone who has had coronavirus. And many of us know or acquainted with someone who's had a negative experience in that they became very severely ill and they were hospitalized, and many people, 145,000, 150,000 or so, have unfortunately lost their lives. And the average age of those individuals is 78 plus or minus a year. And that does, listen, I know many 78-year-olds who are very lively. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that many have perished. And that's what happens with a novel virus. It's a novel, which means new. And it's a reminder that we are all mortal. And some unfortunate younger people have passed away as well. And it reminds us that there is a financial component to this, and that is to have our financial affairs put together. And so I wanted to ask the question today in the current events section that, do you have a written will? Now, the moment is going to happen when you pass away. That's going to happen. Now, I know that's very uplifting to hear on this Monday, and you might be in your 20s and you're like, what in the world are you talking about this? Well, listen, a lot of people may not perish of coronavirus in their 20s, but you know what? Some will perish because of a car accident. Some will perish because of an unknown, undiagnosed condition. We never get to choose, really, when we exit from this life. But we do get to choose on what happens with the resources that we've been blessed with. And we can do that through a written will. And the statistics are very clear. 69% of people with minor children in the house do not have a written will. That means kids under the age of 18. And they will answer this question saying, but Joe, I don't really know who I want to raise my kids. And the reason that's a hard question to answer is because there's no one better than you to raise your kids. Oh, yeah. But I do know you know the answer to this question, and that is, who do you definitely don't want to raise your kids? And a will allows you to answer those questions. It also allows you to make sure that your wishes for your resources are executed. And absent of that legal document, you are not going to be able to control that, and the state, the government, is going to be able to do that. Yeah. And that is very costly, and I guarantee you won't go in the way you want it to go. The second thing is that 58% of all Americans collectively, even those whose kids have left the house, don't have a written will. Of those who do have a written will, 42% of them do. They haven't. Most of them, over half of them, have not updated it in the last 5 years. Things change. So, do you have a will? Do you also have an advanced healthcare directive? And so that means who can make healthcare decisions for you if you become disabled. If for coronavirus patients, those that are put on a ventilator, they're sedated. They can no longer make healthcare decisions for themselves. And absent that document, you are going to have a hard time making decisions, even if it's your spouse or you're the child or you're the parent of that child. That's crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy.
Parent of your child, you can probably do that if they're a minor. And then also, you need a legal, financial, durable power of attorney so that financial decisions can be made for you should you be incapacitated from doing so. And so I want to ask you the question on this Monday, do you have a written will? If you do not, I encourage you to get a written will. If you have a family attorney, you can start there. We also encourage you to check out LegalZoom.com, which will have a link in the show notes. LegalZoom.com is a way that you can get your basic will and those documents that I just referenced for, I don't know, it's around $150, $175 for the family. And that's really important. So I strongly encourage you, think about it. It's very important. It's not what we like to think about on a Monday morning. It's not what we like to talk about ever, frankly. But that's what I wanted to share on today's current money events section. Get fired up.
Yep.
Well, what would you say to all that? Do you have a written will since your baby boy is born?
We do. We actually had one before Logan was born. We left the country and both said we would not leave the country again because we had done it a couple times until we had a written will. So we, yes.
So it was before he was born?
Yes. So what we stated in there, future kids go to X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
So X, Y, and Z have been notified.
In this order. That's right.
Yeah.
So it's really important. And I will say, it would be time to update it to where you could actually name Logan.
We should.
Yep. And so when I updated mine, I've been saying, you gotta update it, blah, 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 blah. Well, I finally went and updated it. I'd been about I'd been a good 10 years since I'd updated mine. So I went and I updated it, and mine only had my firstborn.
I was going to ask,
mentioned.
did you have
the
your
last
second two kids?
No, it mentioned and any other biological or adopted legal children.
Right.
But you know what? I was able to name them now. And we also said, I don't want that person really raising the kids, because my oldest one is now over the age of 18.
Yeah.
She's 20.
She's very
And so I was like, hey, you know what? I think she'd probably have their best interest in mind for her little siblings.
Yeah.
And so she's named as a primary caregiver.
She's a good one.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And so I encourage you to check that out on this great Monday.
Yes.
That's it for today's current money events section.
Yep.
You fired up about that?
Yeah. It's feels heavy, but it's very important. So you should go do it. Okay, so for our success story this week, it's from David. And David said, since starting your program, we have paid off over $45,000 in debt. And he shared that they no longer have a car payment, which is awesome. They have less than $6,000 of debt to pay off, and they have a month's worth of expenses in an emergency fund and should be able to buy their first home at the beginning of next year. He says, after a life of money mismanagement, your business saved us. Financially, emotionally, everything. Money management improves every aspect of life, and it truly gives freedom to live the way you dream. And that is from David.
Wow, that's awesome. That's incredible. So they no longer have a car payment. They have less than $6,000 to pay off. They have a month's worth of expenses in the emergency fund. So let's go up the I Was Broke Now I'm Not ladder. Again, you can check that out, iwbnin.com/ladder. It's free. And it's how we teach financial decision making. And so they've got their plans, hopes, and dreams written down. That's rung 1. Rung 2, that's that month's worth of expenses. So they've achieved rung 2. They don't mention contributing at least $100 a month or getting enough to get the company match and the company retirement plan. That's rung 3. Rung 4, they only have $6,000 left to pay off their non-house debt. That's amazing. They've already paid off $45,000 in debt.
That's
How
wild.
amazing is that? Before you know it, they're going to be on up to rung number 6, getting that emergency fund built to at least 3 months worth. That's awesome. So David, thank you so much. We're celebrating your success. And again, we always want to hear success stories. This podcast is powered by your success.
All right. So now for our featured question. So just to remind you guys, we're talking about financial boundaries with children. So defining those financial boundaries. So our question for today is, I know someone who is still financially supporting their adult child, even though they should clearly be able to support themselves. They are nearly 40 years old. All of my kids are still in the house. What are some things I can do to train my kids to be financially independent?
Okay.
I think of I don't know if you've seen this movie, but the movie Failure to Launch. Have you seen that movie?
I've not seen that movie.
With Matthew McConaughey. You should. It's good. It's basically this. He's in his 30s or whatever, and he's trying to date this girl, but he's still living with his parents. And she finds out, and she's like, I think this is a deal breaker. And her whole job is getting guys to move out from home and become self-sufficient. So it's kind of a funny twist on that.
I need to watch that. Yeah, there you go. And I know many of you are nodding their heads. Yeah, I know that person. I know that person individually. I may, so there's really 2 issues to address in this question. And the number one is, what do you do when you are the parent of an adult child who keeps asking for financial assistance? So we'll speak to you if you're in the audience today. And then number 2, what to do to train your children if they're still in the house and young, so you can prevent this from happening to you when they're older. Now, let's start by addressing those of you who have an adult child who keeps asking for financial assistance. And I want you to lean in, and we had this with our team here. You may be the sibling of someone who is this adult child who keeps asking your parents for help, and it drives you crazy. In fact, our team members were talking about this, and I was like, I think we're onto something here. I mean, there are extra special emotions.
Yeah.
When you know how hard you're working to live independently, and you see a sibling who is well able to care for themselves, who keep going back to mom and dad, and mom and dad, you feel like keep falling for the trap of helping them. Hey, look, you're not alone. A recent report from Merrill Lynch and AgeWave found that parents are spending a combined $500 billion a year on their grown kids, age 18 to 35. That's double what they're putting towards their own retirement. Wow. According to the study, 79% of parents are helping their adult children in some financial way, whether it's for their weddings, which I find is somewhat reasonable.
Sure.
But watch this, their cell phone bills or groceries. But the toll can be steep, advisors say. Supporting able-bodied children or repeatedly bailing them out of debt creates dependency when parents should help them become self-sufficient. The unwise spending also can, number one, delay or derail the parent's retirement. Two, fuel sibling resentment and family discord. And number three, enable dangerous behavior, including addiction or untreated mental illness. Sure. The just say no advice doesn't get far with parents stuck in these patterns, advisors say. Many parents don't understand the harm they're actually doing, and the children certainly have no incentive to change, says Bruce McClary, a former credit counselor and spokesman for the National Foundation for Credit Counseling in Washington, D.C. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
$500 billion. That's $500 billion, more than they're putting to their own retirement accounts. And so let's talk about things that we can do. Number one, let's go.
Yes. So number one, the thing that you can do if you have young kids in the house now, or your kids are getting a little bit older to that age where they should be going out. So the first one is establish boundaries.
Yes.
Key.
Got to establish boundaries. It all starts with healthy boundaries. Everybody say it with me. Healthy.
Healthy.
Yeah. Healthy. What is a boundary? Well, it's the edge of a property is what I think of. I looked it up on dictionary.com. Tell everybody what the dictionary definition of a boundary is.
Yes. So it's a noun, and it's something that indicates limits.
Yeah, I like that word limits. And have you ever heard this saying? Fences make good neighbors.
We have
you
a
ever
fence.
heard that?
I like our
you
fence.
Have a fence?
I love my neighbors too.
I didn't have a fence.
Great.
I like my neighbors. My neighbors were great, and they came over and said, we're putting up a fence. So I'm like, okay, now we're great neighbors, apparently. Without clear boundaries, both stated and unstated, there will be infringement into territory that should be off limits. That happens with real property, with land, and it happens with what the topic is we're talking today.
Yeah.
Financial limits. Having clear boundaries will allow you, the parent, to quickly answer the question, should we help them out? If you have clear boundaries that says we're never going to bail them out of rent payments, you'll be able to quickly say, no, they should be able to take care of this.
Yeah.
Let's talk to those with adult children who are still requesting financial assistance. I encourage you to establish new boundaries. Obviously, if you have this issue, the boundaries are in the wrong place or they've been crossed so many times the fence is broken. So you need to give them new boundaries and to give them a timeline, also a deadline. And you can say it this way. I'm going to give you some phrasing. You need to be taking care of this bill yourself. And if you're married and two parents, you need to say that both of us are on this page.
Right.
We have made the decision that this will be effective next month. Or we have made the decision this will be effective at the end of the year. Choose the timeline. Recognize that this can immediately cause stress and tension with the child. And they just might do what they've always done. What's that?
They might throw a temper tantrum.
40-year-olds still throw temper tantrums.
They just look a little
It's
different.
really awful to watch.
Yeah.
I've seen these. I've sat in coaching sessions with them. They're little, I'm going to call it what it is. You ready?
I'm not
They're
sure.
crybabies.
Okay.
They're a bunch of whiny babies.
Yeah.
That's really what they are. Because mommy and daddy should pay for this and I would have to work hard and I might sweat. Yeah, and? I love what Dave Ramsey says. There's a good place to go when you're broke. To work. It's a surefire money-making scheme.
That's right.
That's a great statement. But it's going to cause stress, and they'll throw a temper tantrum. And this is what I find. When they have young kids, your grandkids, they will threaten to not let you see the grandkids. They'll use the kids as a pawn. And they will also choose not to visit you or call you. And I want to give you some true understanding that this says a lot more about them than it says about you. It says a lot about their maturity level. Be prepared for it. One great way to be prepared for it is to read the book, Boundaries, written by Dr. Henry Cloud, who will help you guide yourself to put together healthy boundaries even when your kids won't do so. Now, listen, if you don't do this, you got an adult child. You've made all the excuses in the world for them. But ask yourself this question as you ride in your car this morning on this Monday when you want to turn this off, because this is fostering negative emotions, and I know that. I want you to really face yourself. Look in that rearview mirror, and I want you to say, hey, is this reasonable behavior? Are my friends having to do the same thing for their children? Why are my children constantly coming to me? And I know it may make you feel good. They make you feel good about sponsoring what they're doing. But at the end of the day, are you helping that child? Is it coming at a cost to you being able to support yourself? I'm not talking about, hey, you want to include your family on a family vacation and you want to pay for everybody to go to Disney World. I'm not talking about that. That's a blessing. I'm talking about when they won't care for their basic necessities. They won't take care of their house. They won't pay their rent. They won't pay their power bill. They won't put food on the table. They won't buy clothes for the kids. Why? Because they're just misbehaving with their money. They had enough money to go buy the boat, the motorcycle, to go on that other trip by themselves. Okay? So I want you to ask yourself that question. Does it make sense? And what do you need to do different? How would you like this to be different? I know this. For every parent who blesses their adult child, they want it to be a blessing, not an enabling.
Yeah.
Now, for those who want to prevent this from happening when their children are grown, now I've got 2 kids still in the house, and one, she's out. She ain't ever coming back. She's 20. She's in an apartment. She's in college. She's living the high life. She has informed me she's never coming back, to which I said, hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. And she's fine with that. I did that in front of her, actually. Communicate clearly with them, right? Are you communicating clearly with Logan right now? He's 1. Have you told him, hey, buddy, you got 17 years and you're out? Have you told him that?
I mean, he probably wouldn't quite understand it yet. He understands a lot, but
you should tell him that.
Yeah.
It'd be awesome.
Time's a ticking, bud.
See, this is a statement that I want all of you with kids in the house to repeat multiple times, and maybe on a quarterly basis. Hey, when you graduate from high school or college, whichever it is for you, you're going to be responsible for all these bills, the auto insurance, your cell phone bill, and all car repairs. Communicate it clearly.
Yeah.
It's called discipline. And it's one of the greatest gifts you as a parent can give your children. One of the greatest things ever. It is so hard, especially when you as a parent have the financial means to help them. It's so hard for you to say, I'm going to step back. I'm going to let you own this. But my father continually let all 6 of his boys know that when you turn 18, maybe sooner, we will be on our own. I never viewed it as a negative, ever. I never once viewed it as a negative. It was a stated fact that it was as true as gravity is real and as true as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, that at 18, we're on our own. And for me, it made things very clear boundaries, made good neighbors, made for a clear relationship. And you know what? When I went off to college, you know what? I ran up a lot of debt, but I didn't come running to mom and dad to bail me out of it. Yeah. And so it's hugely important. Okay? So number 1, we got to have clear boundaries.
And I think a key with that one is we talk about the timeline or the deadline of when you say, this is when this is going to happen. And I think that's just as important for you as the parent to know, okay, this is coming. This is going to have to change. I'm going to have to change just like they're going to have to change. But it also helps you, gives you the freedom to say like, okay, I gave them ample time. It wasn't like I pulled the rug out from underneath them. Like, I gave them the deadline of this is when this is going to happen. And they're, you're both able to move on and hopefully your relationship is better because of it.
Yeah. But I remember distinctly a moment, we had some friends visit and their kids were doing something and it was very similar to what my kids were doing at the time and they're misbehaving. And he sat them down and he gave them some new rules and he gave some information to them that said, you're not going to do this anymore. The deadline is now. You do this again. This is the consequence. And they sat and they listened. I heard them do that. And I'm like, man, that sounds pretty harsh. And then the more I listened to it, I was like, I understand why he's doing this. Yeah. And I've adapted it into my own parenting. And what I've learned is if anybody have a kid whose room is constantly messy, and you tell them to clean it up, you go in there and they're sitting on their iPad and they won't even listen to you. And you're like, hey, how come you're not cleaning your room? And they won't even give you attention. They roll their eyes at you. Hey, listen, that's not because they're a bad kid. It's because you're being a bad parent. That's what I learned. I'm being a bad parent. Because let me tell you, the reason they do that is there's no consequences. Right. Because you have to raise the expectation level on a new rule. And so I remember that distinct situation happening for my daughter. And finally, I just said, hey, look, let me tell you something. If you do not clean your room, the moment I tell you to go clean your room, I'm removing everything from your room, all of it, including your clothes. If it's not nailed down, I'm taking it. And here's the deal. You won't be able to find it. And I'm going to issue outfits for you. I took all clothing. I'm issuing dad, and I have no fashion sense whatsoever. And I'm going to issue clothing for at least a week to you. Yeah. And the first time they didn't take that serious. So I emptied the room. It took me 45 minutes to empty the room. They were gone to school. My daughter, She came home, where's my stuff? You didn't clean your room.
I wish I could have seen that.
Oh, man. Let me tell you something. After about a week of me issuing outfits, from then on, there's new things. When I say go clean your room, guess what? I don't have to yell about it.
She moved.
She moves. Why? Because now there's a consequence.
Yeah.
Do you see it? Same is true here.
Yep.
And so we got to have boundaries. And the second thing that we have to do is what?
Yes. You have to teach them how to win with money.
This is so important. If you want your kids to be able to financially independent, be that way, they got to learn about it. And the greatest place, the greatest incubator, the greatest training ground is in your household. And if you have adult children that are struggling with money, it starts with buying them some books. Of course, they could buy I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. You should buy that I've written. It's about the fundamentals of money. Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. It's got a lot of success stories in it. I like that. And then Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And we'll list this in the show notes. The second thing is I encourage you to buy them tickets to a financial conference. One of our financial learning experiences. Those tickets cost $0. Dave Ramsey has events for as little as $19. There's a lot of real estate workshops. And offer to pay for one-on-one financial coaching or sit down with them yourself. Now, that can be very tough because I know even adult kids don't want to hear much from dear old mom and dad, right? But that's 3 things you could do. Get them some financial education because that's so huge for helping them establish confidence in money management.
Yeah.
Now, if it's young kiddos, you can teach for them to save, teach them to save for and purchase items with their own money. I remember my daughter wanted a Care Bear, a purple one, and she saved up money. It was all coins and it was $20. And we went and she counted coins forever. It was kind of weird. But you know what? I saw it fostered confidence in her. And I did this myself. And it also teaches patience and delayed gratification. So important, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then teach them the value of working for money. I like Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace Jr. It's a kit. And it provides a compensation system with a dry erase board. And it allows you to compensate your kids for chores. And it also allows penalties if they throw fits. I like penalties. and then have them read 4 personal finance books. Financial Peace Revisited by Dave Ramsey. The Wealthy Barber by David Chilton. The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. And the book I've written, What Everyone Should Know About Money Before They Enter the Real World. We'll have this listed in the show notes for you. And then I encourage you to teach them the power of investing. This is the greatest thing that can give an adult child financial independence is investing. And so list some things that they could do to learn how to invest, Megan.
Yep. So one of them is you could bring them along with you to meet with the investment advisor or to one of your business meetings, maybe.
Yeah.
They can learn
so
about them.
I've drugged my kids to meeting with an investment advisor, and sometimes they're standing there with their eyes twirling in their heads and they're confused and they just want to play on the iPad for Minecraft. But you know what? They're picking up stuff. They do.
Yep.
And then what's another thing we could do?
Yep. So you can invite them into a conversation as you investigate potential investments.
Yep. My son, he's 10 right now. He's well aware of mom and dad's investments, both existing ones and those we're considering. And he's like, why would you do that? Why is that happening? And in his 10-year-old mind, he understands it. He understands we're doing that in the hopes that we make more money with it, that our money is going to work for us, that mom and dad are preparing for retirement. And it helps them know that they don't have to work for every dollar they receive. And the sooner they learn this, the better it is for them. And hint, hint, the better it is for you long term. And so what we'd like to do is wish you good luck. These are very difficult conversations. We've just scratched the surface. We're probably going to dive into each of these individually in future episodes. We would love to hear your feedback. What is the situation? What is the scenario you're facing with your adult grown children? Do you have any that keep coming back and asking for basic financial assistance? Or if you're training up your kids, what has kind of been the thing that motivated you to do that? Do you have a sibling who is keep touching mom and dad for more money? We'd love to hear those stories as well so that we can be able to answer those questions on upcoming podcasts.
Yeah.
What's our quota verse for this episode?
So our verse for today is Proverbs 22:6, and it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
That's right. And as we emphasized at the start of the episode, train up a child in the way he should go. Emphasis added by us.
Yep.
So next week, we're going to talk about how to build your credit or rebuild it. Most of us know that bad credit scores can affect our ability to borrow money for a home. However, did you know that a bad credit score can affect the price of your insurance or even your ability to get certain jobs? We're going to take some time next Monday to discuss how to build or rebuild your credit. And if you like today's episode, please help us get this podcast to other people who could benefit. You can do it by quickly rating our podcast and leaving a review. Those ratings and reviews help us in making our podcast better for our listeners, help others discover it. And if you've implemented one of our tips successfully, share it with us at info@iwbnin.com or any of our social media channels. And if you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button, click the like button, or the dislike button if you hate it so bad, and tell us why in the comments. We'll see you next Monday. In the meantime, be fired up and go get those wheels updated. We'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit iwbnin.com. We'll catch you next time.